Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special report. Today, I'm going to talk about a retrograde review. So, in the world of astrology and in terms of in natal chart interpretation, many planets are often retrograde. And just on a fundamental basis, retrograde motion is actually what they call secondary motion. The primary motion of the planets is our normal way of relating to the planets as they orbit. And secondary motion refers to the slowing down of the planet in relationship to its natural orbit. So while it seems as though the planet is moving backwards through the zodiac, it's actually just a change in speed. Jeffrey Wolf Green talks about the retrograde from a soul level, from an archetypal level, as doing two things. One, that there is an internalization of the function of the planet. And I'll talk more about what that means. And the other is that there's an acceleration of the impulse for evolution. So this year we have several planets that will be retrograde. I want to go through just briefly, and this will be posted on my website with the full report. For those of you who are on my email list, you already got this at the beginning of the year when I sent out the full transit PDF report. But I will be offering a retrograde period review um, on my website linked with this video. Mercury does three retrogrades in the year. The first is going to occur on March 15th until April 7th in the sign of Aries and Pisces. Then later on in the year, from July 18th to August 11th, it will be retrograde in the sign of Leo. November 9th to the 29th, at the end of the year, it'll be retrograde in the signs of Sagittarius and Scorpio. During each of the retrograde cycles of Mercury, there's three retrogrades per year, and they each last 3 weeks. However, there's the 3 weeks prior to the retrograde when Mercury is in the shadow, so from 26 degrees Pisces to 9 degrees Aries. Now, most of this video today, I'm going to focus on the retrograde of Mercury and I'm going to focus on the retrograde of Venus because those two are imminent and they're intrinsically tied to the eclipse cycles of this first set of eclipses. And we'll go into that a little bit more as well. But I'll just note, Mercury is basically following Venus in this, and their sort of retrogrades are very much woven. Venus's retrograde will also cover almost the same degrees and some of the same time period as well. Venus's retrograde is from March 1st until April 12th. And her retrograde will also go through the signs of Aries and Pisces. So she's going to station retrograde. Her pre-shadow was from when she reached 24 degrees Pisces, which she's already clearly all the way into Aries right now. She's close to her station degree of 10 degrees Aries. She'll go all the way back to 24 degrees Pisces. Her retrograde is also interwoven not only with the Mercury retrograde cycle and the eclipse cycles, but also with the conjunctions to the North Node, which she already had her first conjunction to the North Node, and to Neptune, as well as Saturn. So we'll look at that in our video today. And then Mars, who has been retrograde since December 6th of last year, will conclude its retrograde in 2 days from the making of this video on February 23rd. In Cancer, the retrograde of Mars went all the way from 17 degrees Cancer, where it will station direct in 2 days, to 6 degrees Leo. And so we'll look a little bit at that because Mars is going direct and completing its retrograde cycle as Venus and Mercury are going retrograde. There's sort of a passing of the baton. But because Mars hasn't cleared its shadow and won't do so until May 2nd, the retrograde zone itself of Mars is active during this entire Mercury and Venus retrograde. And that's really important to take note of. Venus and Mars are, you know, rulers of a polarity, they're rulers of the polarity of Scorpio and Taurus, and they're rulers of the polarity of Aries and Libra. And in fact, because Venus will be doing most of her retrograde in Mars's sign, there's also this interrelationship where Mars is the ruler of Mercury and Venus while they are retrograde. And we'll break that down a little bit more as well when I talk about it. Jupiter concluded its retrograde in Gemini just recently on February 4th and is still in its shadow. And it has been in the sign of Gemini since October 9th. It will leave Gemini very soon this year and move into the sign of Cancer. And later on at the end of the year in November, Jupiter will be retrograde from November 11th in the sign of Cancer until March 10th. So that will be the next Jupiter retrograde cycle. Saturn is retrograde from July 13th in the signs of Aries and Pisces. Now, the Saturn retrograde in this Aries Pisces, if you're paying attention, you're noticing a theme that so many of the planets this year are doing their retrograde in Aries and Pisces. To me, this really points to an accelerated evolutionary cycle around Pisces culmination and Aries initiation. So we have two complete different phases of our evolution working themselves out in two different signs, but they're very much interwoven together. And Uranus, which will move into the sign of Gemini this year, is going to do its retrograde in the sign of Taurus. So it's wrapping up the Uranus and Taurus cycle at the end of the year. And Uranus will be retrograde from September 6th until February 3rd of 2026. And that retrograde will cover from the sign of Gemini into the sign of Taurus and complete the Uranus and Taurus cycle. Neptune will be retrograde from July 4th until December 10th. And that retrograde is in also this Pisces Aries culmination cycle. And then Pluto will be retrograde from May 4th until October 13th in the sign of Aquarius. And Pluto's retrograde, which spans 6 months, will go back and forth from 1 degree Aquarius to 3 degrees Aquarius. So, we're going to be working the next 20 years with Pluto in Aquarius, but each of the retrogrades will cover 6 months out of the year. Now, Pluto, all of the outer planets, they are more frequently retrograde. They are retrograde for longer periods of time, several months at a time. And Venus, however, is the most rare of the retrogrades, and it's really important. I want to, break this down for you from an evolutionary perspective because there are two different facets of Venus that are being worked out, and this will be different for everyone depending on where the retrograde is in your natal chart. If we have time, I could go through the signs. I'll also say that the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers, as a part of their annual membership, our annual membership offering, will be doing a deep dive into Venus through all 12 of the signs. So if you have not learned much about Venus and you want to learn more about her from an evolutionary perspective, we have a team of evolutionary astrologers, including Kristen Fontana, Ari Moshe, Jason Hawley, Jordan Smith, Rav Chahal, and Rose Marcus, and myself, who will all be teaching on polarity of Venus. So We'll go all the way from Aries and Libra, which will be the first class in the series, starts March 15th, all the way through the entire zodiac, covering all 12 signs over 6 monthly classes. That whole course is included in the annual membership, which is $99. And when you sign up for the membership, you also get a $50 discount to our online conference each year. You will get bonus discounts this year as we are launching a couple of really special classes with select teachers throughout the year. We've been planning out the calendar for this year, and it's amazing the learning opportunities that are coming up for you. So, if you want to join that, we will be doing a free class on March 1st that is available to everyone, and you can attend whether or not you decide to become a member of the association. So, getting into Venus and getting into Mercury and their retrogrades. Venus, as we already know, is already moving through the shadow degrees. And what I mean by the shadow degrees is she's already moving through the direct motion, the primary motion of the degrees that she will be going retrograde. And as a part of that, she conjoined with the North Node, which is in Pisces. She conjoined with Neptune. And that kicked off a new evolutionary cycle with both Neptune and the North Node, where we're really learning about the Pisces aspect of Venus. Now, Jeffrey Wolf Green taught extensively on Venus and Mars in his Pluto 2 book. It's one of the number one resources that I often reference and quote, especially when I'm teaching the planetary phases. But he taught about the nature and the function of Venus and Venus in Pisces, where he says, in particular, Venus in Pisces is learning to embrace a transcendental value system in order to create a sense of ultimate meaning in their life. The evolutionary process, leading through many lifetimes, is leading one to personal and social disillusionment. This creates a total sense of meaninglessness associated with temporal values. The Venus in Pisces person may not have consciously conceptualized or realized this intent, but the intent is to embrace a transcendental spiritual value system. So, what is that talking about, right? That's talking about ultimate meaning. We're talking about truth with a capital T. We're talking about values that are universal, like unconditional love, forgiveness, these things that we really, they're not easy lessons to learn, but with the North Node in Pisces for the next 18 months, with Saturn in Pisces, with Neptune in Pisces, we've been learning these lessons. These are lessons about pain and suffering. These are lessons about disillusionment and healing. Ultimately, this is bringing us to the deeper healing work in our lives that is initiating us as healers. You know, when um when we think about it, then with Venus moving into Aries, there is a new evolutionary impulse instinctually that is coming online that is healing parts of our experience that are the Aries experience. And here we say what Jeffrey Wolf Green talks about the Venus and Aries person. He says that they will be quite narcissistic, self-oriented, and feel within themselves that they are quite special. Now, that sounds like Venus in Leo a little bit, but um, it is because instinctively they feel some special destiny to fulfill, and they need independence in order to actualize it. Thus, these people can never fully commit themselves to another person, keeping a deep part of themselves, their inner self, isolated from the relationship. Cyclically, the Venus and Aries person can be extremely passionate and involved. They can seem fully committed through displays of intense, passionate energy, right? This is instinctual passion. And without the Saturn nature, instinctual passion fizzles out. Without the Saturn commitment, instinctual passion, it's like, oh, I felt excited, and so I got myself involved. And whether it's involved in a job, involved in a work project, whether it's involved in a relationship, right? This is how attraction can lead to a one night stand and ultimately become quite hurtful or harmful to another human being because the act of intimacy itself is quite a sacred thing. It's actually quite a Pisces thing. It's where life and life force is created from, right? Life is created from sexual intimacy. And if we misuse that energy, sexuality can become quite distorted and it can be incredibly harmful. The instinctual Aries energy, which we would associate Mars, the god of war, to, can become destructive. So, as a part of this Venus retrograde, I believe, and as a part of the Mercury retrograde, we are learning how to regulate that strong sense of self, that instinctual, um, you know, passionate drive, and its need and nature, which can be very unique and very personal, right? Everyone is living their own personal story right now. Everyone lives in their own personal universe. That is true. We come into the world with ourselves and we leave the world with ourselves, right? We don't take anybody with us. Um, we don't get to journey through our whole lives with anyone. Zero people who come with you for the entirety of this journey. You will lose people along the way. You will love people and they will leave. You will love people and they will stay with you for a long time. But people come and people go. And the Aries nature is to recognize I only have myself and I am myself, but I'm also in relationship. I'm also in relationship to the divine will, which is much more powerful and greater than my own personal will. We can see that when we see the limitations of our own life, right? This is where people get very confused when they believe that I am the manifester and the creator of my own reality, but you did not create yourself. You were created by someone. Now, you might seemingly think, well, I'm created by my parents, but even that is a power greater than yourself because the two people who created you had to come together, and then some force larger than yourself, larger than your parents, larger than your mother, wove you together and brought you into the world. Now, your creator must have a plan for you. And hopefully, it's like the quote from Einstein, you either can believe that everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle, but what you believe makes it so, right? What you believe or think about yourself, your destiny, your purpose in the world, right? And Aries does have to do with instinctually activating our purpose in the world. And Pisces has everything to do with the divine nature of our purpose in the world, which can be actually quite a mystery to most of us. Quite a mystery on some level where, only when you're lying on your deathbed, kind of looking back and doing a review of your life, can you weave all the pieces and the parts together and say, oh, okay, I really understand this. So, Venus in Aries is more of a strong, instinctual, sexual nature, willful nature. And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, so there is an initiation happening here. But we have to think about what happens with the retrograde. Now, Mars has been retrograde, and just in a few days is going to be stationing direct. And the retrograde is an internalization of that planetary function. I happen to be born with Venus retrograde, which is a rare thing. Um, and I have several other retrograde planets, including Mercury retrograde. So I'm very familiar with this archetype in my soul. It's kind of the nature of why I'm here working something out, right? And so both while I'm working something out, and there's this internalization of the aspect of Venus and Mercury that is being worked out. There is at the same time, what I spoke about earlier, an acceleration of evolution that's happening. And why is it that acceleration is happening? Well, because from a soul perspective, we have a deeper desire to resolve whatever the karmic dynamic is from the past.